The story began with a man named Tiro Kamashiro, an ordinary employee with plain features, living a dull, uneventful life. Every morning he woke up, went to work, came back home, watched boring news broadcasts, and went to sleep to repeat the same routine the next day. But one night, while staring at his TV screen, a mysterious force believed by people to be a governing power offered him the chance to break that tiresome routine. That force appeared before him, showing him a planet called Medias, where civilizations kept disappearing from time to time. Since this same power also governed another planet called Moses, it saw restoring Medias as its responsibility, though it couldn't intervene directly. So it chose Tiro as its envoy to bring about the revival of that world. Tiro was thrown into confusion. He was just an ordinary worker with no real talent, and he grew more anxious when he thought about his job waiting for him, fearing his boss might fire him if he didn't show up. But the mysterious power explained that he had actually died in his original world the moment he was summoned here, and rejecting the mission would cause his soul to vanish. That's when Tiro realized he had no choice but to accept. The power granted him special abilities, maximizing his magical energy, and asked what else he wanted to add. A shameful worldly desire came to his mind, but the power reassured him that his journey would bring him across many women of various peoples. Then it added to his attributes a search ability, along with several useful skills such as understanding all languages and resistance to poisons, and gave him a bag to store his tools. After that, it hurriedly sent him off to the new world without a goodbye. Tiro opened his eyes to find himself sitting beside a tree in a lush forest. He stood up, observed his surroundings, and decided to look for a place where people lived. He walked for a long time until he spotted a village in the distance. He was starving since his arrival but hesitated to ask for free food. Then he remembered the search ability he'd been given, which could help him collect materials and sell them. Excitedly, he raised his voice to activate it, but nothing happened. Thinking he had pronounced the spell wrong, he wrote its words on the ground in his old language. Symbols suddenly glowed, marking material locations. Leaf icons that looked like clovers, others shaped like diamonds or hearts. He tried the scanning ability on one of the plants and discovered that moonlight grass was a yellow flower that bloomed on full moon nights, classified as rank B. He picked some and stored them in his bag, then moved on collecting other lower-ranked materials. He realized the clover symbol stood for herbs, the heart for living creatures, and the diamond for minerals and rocks. After gathering enough, he headed to the village to sell his goods. At the gate, he was stopped by a guard named Marlowe, who asked about his purpose. Tiro said he was a traveling merchant who collected and sold resources. The guard was impressed and directed him to the general store. On the way, some villagers greeted him, staring curiously at his unusual height and distinctive look. When he entered the shop, he showed his items to the merchant, who was amazed by their quality and assumed Tiro was an expert craftsman. The merchant asked him to bring an ore called mithyl from a nearby mountain, and bought what Tiro had brought for 300,000 rav, roughly $20,000. He could hardly believe his sudden fortune, but his ambition grew, so he accepted the new job without hesitation, despite the possible dangers awaiting him on the mountain. Before heading out, Tiro decided to rest that night at a small local inn. In his room, a maid came to offer room service and told him the place had no bathrooms. Those were luxuries reserved for nobles. So Tiro improvised, using a cleaning spell that instantly removed all dirt from his body. Yet he didn't feel fully satisfied, nothing compared to the warmth of a long bath as he used to in his old life. The next morning, he set off on his first mission in this strange city. On his way, he used his search skill to gather materials from along the path, not leaving a single useful thing behind. His journey took him to a forest of white trees, known among the locals as the Forest of Ancient Dragons. He was starting to get used to his new life, and while searching, a diamond icon appeared for the first time. Thinking it marked something valuable, he rushed toward it without hesitation. He found a decayed corpse of a fallen warrior, and fear struck him at the sight. Yet curiosity won out, and he cautiously examined the area again. Beside the body, he found a family talisman with no rank. When he opened it, he discovered a letter from the warrior's sister, thanking him for what he had done for them and begging him to come home no matter what. Tiro realized the man would never return, so he buried him by hand and said a short prayer. Before sunset, he chose a place to camp, set up a magical barrier for protection, and built a fire using the stones he'd collected. He mixed some herbs in a small pot and cooked his first meal in this world, pleasantly surprised by its flavor. The next morning, he continued toward the forest's edge, using his search ability to find more resources. He was puzzled by the lack of mining ores that were said to be there, and he noticed the absence of monsters people had warned him about. He wondered if they were avoiding him because of his scent, but considered that a blessing as long as he stayed safe. He ran happily toward the forest's end, but to his surprise, a wide chasm separated him from the mountains. Unable to stop, he fell into the abyss and used all his magic to survive, landing safely inside a cave. Using search again, he found many ores, but no mithyl among them. Boosting his magic power, he finally detected mithril, but before he could approach, the cave shook violently. He cast an explosion spell toward the spot he saw, scattering pieces of mithril, managing to collect a few before the shaking began again. Instead of fleeing, he went deeper into the cave, lighting his way with a faint glow. There he found crystal clear water unlike anything he'd ever seen, and checked it using scan magic. It turned out to be high-ranking underground magical water, extremely rare and valuable. Realizing its worth, he decided to taste it. The scan further revealed that the water belonged to an ancient dragon dwelling deep beneath the earth, making him wonder if the creature was still alive. Before long, the water began to ripple violently. The dragon had truly awakened from its slumber. Tiro's high magical energy had disturbed its rest. The dragon rose, water streaming off its body. Tiro instantly knelt and apologized for the trouble, a habit he'd carried from his office days. Introducing himself as a human, he offered his regrets. The dragon, calling itself Vuldios, replied that Tiro's magical power nearly matched its own. Tiro wasn't seeking compliments, but Vuldios asked him for a favor in exchange for a valuable reward. He explained that the still water had stopped his egg from hatching, and he needed Tiro's magical energy to bring it to life. In return, he promised to give Tiro the mithril he was looking for, and guided him to channel his energy into the egg to start incubation. Thinking the egg needed heat to hatch, Tiro infused it with his magic to warm it, but suddenly, a mysterious force engulfed him. The ground trembled, and Vuldios let out a booming laugh. Fear-filled Tiro, was this a trap to kill him? He fell into the water and began to drown, lamenting the cruel fate that brought him death again just when he'd been given a second chance to live. When he closed his eyes thinking it was the end, he found himself before a figure unlike the previous mystical power, some kind of celestial being watching him closely. The being said that anyone who saw a dragon would either flee or faint, but this human had surpassed both fear and sense, so much that his existence alone could change the world's balance. Then the being murmured that since Tiro desired a gentle companion, he would have one. Tiro's vision faded again, and he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was alive, with Vuldios standing in front of him, and a faint whimper echoed nearby. He turned to see a small dragon jumping toward him, licking him playfully with its dirty tongue. He gently pushed it away, and Vuldios told him to give the newborn a name. Tiro named him Black. Vuldios approved, and asked Tiro to take the hatchling with him, saying Tiro could care for it properly. He gave Tiro the mithril he had come for, and returned to the depths of the water. Tiro had no choice but to accept the responsibility. He washed the little dragon and prepared to leave, asking his new companion if he was ready to join him on his next gathering trip. He left the cave with Black perched on his shoulder, the small dragon fluttering around joyfully, seeing the world for the first time. As sunset approached, Tiro set up camp. Unpacking his gear and noticing that his bag was now filled with high-grade magical water, he remembered Vuldios had breathed special magic into it earlier. Through his magic system, Tiro learned that this water was essential for raising young dragons. He filled a cup and gave it to Black, who in return offered him a small symbolic sip, a gesture of friendship and companionship. Tiro drank it respectfully, finding the taste rather plain despite its immense value. Then he created magical stones and used a firestone to light the campfire. After hours of cooking, he prepared a pot of meat stew for himself and his little dragon, and they ate together happily. Before sleeping, Tiro wondered if Black felt lonely after parting with his parent. The dragon answered with a silent hug, making Tiro realize the little one saw him as his father. A warm feeling of joy filled his heart for the gentle companion fate had given him on his very first day in this strange world. Driven by curiosity, he opened the abilities list and found that Black was actually an ancient dragon of rank B, even stronger than him, which made him feel more responsible toward him. In the morning, Tiro climbed to the surface and noticed the forest looked different from the day before, but he ignored it and continued collecting herbs skillfully as usual. Suddenly, Black hid behind him trembling, and Tiro sensed several monsters approaching. When he turned, a huge rock hawk let out an ear-splitting screech. It was a rank C monster. Tiro wasn't scared. Compared to an ancient dragon like Vuldios, this bird looked like a toy. Confident and determined, he prepared to fight. Imagining roasting its legs over the fire, he summoned a magical shield for defense, then cast 3 ice spears that struck the bird and brought it down. The other monsters soon appeared, and Tiro happily saw them as another source of food. Using speed and hardening spells to boost his power, he launched swift, decisive attacks and defeated them all without even needing a weapon. After the battle ended, Tiro got busy collecting the loot left behind by the monsters, when new ones surrounded him again. He found it annoying, realizing that getting back to the village would take days if things kept going like this. Black tried to help by lifting him into the air, but he wasn't strong enough, so Tiro used a weight-reducing spell to make himself lighter, and the two soared high into the sky. Black realized too late what had happened, and accidentally let go of his friend, but Tiro landed safely among the tree branches. They continued toward the village, and along the way, Tiro found a branch from a strange high-grade tree in his bag. He wondered why it was there, and who'd put it in. He fiddled with it a little until Black breathed his magic breath on it, turning the branch instantly into a magnificent magic staff. Tiro considered it a new blessing that qualified him for a real challenge. He then heard a deep roar coming from deep in the forest, a sound that would make any sensible person retreat, but Black dashed toward it with excitement, and Tiro followed until they found an elf girl sitting under a tree, exhausted and wounded. It looked like she'd been attacked, but she denied it. Soon, her empty stomach growled loudly, and Tiro realized that the roar he'd heard wasn't a monster's, it was human hunger. The girl told him she hadn't eaten in 3 days and weakly asked for water. Tiro handed her his flask, and she drank every drop, her face regaining color after being pale as death. She thanked him warmly, but hunger soon returned, so he offered her a sandwich from his bag. She devoured it hungrily until a cheerful energy filled her, bringing back her vitality. Tiro asked why her food had run out when she wasn't far from the village. She answered awkwardly, revealing her lack of travel experience. He realized she was a beginner adventurer who hadn't prepared her provisions properly. When she tried to argue, he gently hushed her, pointing out the sweet scent coming from her. The girl took offense at his comment and stormed off angrily without thanking him again. Tiro left the forest as well, and saw a carriage in the distance pulled by a unicorn. Judging from its weak ranking, this kind wasn't rare in that world. The merchant driving the carriage offered to give Tiro and his little dragon a ride to the village, and he gladly accepted. The merchant's children were talkative and started to annoy him, so he jokingly tried to scare them by saying he might be a disguised thief. But the kids just laughed confidently, saying their magical bell would ring if danger approached, yet it remained silent. Tiro was intrigued by the bell, while the family grew more interested in him when they noticed the small dragon on his shoulder. The merchant asked what kind of creature it was, and Tiro replied that it was a small black dragon, without revealing its true identity as an ancient dragon. The merchant was astonished, since dragons were usually companions of chosen knights. He was surprised that such a calm man traveled with such a powerful creature. When they learned that Tiro had hatched the egg himself, their amazement doubled, so Tiro chose silence to avoid further questions. Night fell before they reached the village, so they set up camp near the road. Tiro lit the area with a light spell, and cast a protective barrier to keep monsters away. The family had some doubts about the simple spell's effectiveness, but he reassured them that Black would warn them of any incoming danger. That made them feel safe. Trusting in a dragon's ability to guard them, Lady Eliza offered to prepare dinner for everyone, but Tiro eagerly volunteered to cook himself. His recipe book only had meat soup in it, but he decided to turn it into a full meal for his companions. He pulled out ingredients from his magic bag, impressing the children with his ability to summon things from another dimension. They asked if he was a skilled wizard, but he modestly said he was just an ordinary man. His bag was the special one, not him. After an hour's work, dinner was ready. 3 dishes: grilled steak, his signature meat soup, and a salad of mushrooms and vegetables. The children tasted the food first, followed by their parents, and everyone was amazed by the flavor. The merchant was so impressed that he jokingly thought anyone who could cook like that deserved to be a household head, not just a wandering cook. Tiro simply smiled, puzzled by the mysterious deliciousness he couldn't quite explain. After dinner, the merchant took out his lute and played a gentle, sweet tune, accompanied by his wife's soft, melodious voice, while their children danced joyfully around the fire. Black joined in their fun with childlike playfulness, and soon the children pulled Tiro in to dance with them. In that moment, he felt that the simple happiness he shared with strangers on this warm night far surpassed the lonely peace he once knew in his old world. When dawn broke, Tiro started the day, maintaining his gear, while the merchant and his wife readied the carriage for the trip to the village. They all had a light breakfast, then continued on until they reached the outskirts of Tormi village. At the gate, Tiro got off the carriage and thanked the family for their kind company, and they returned the thanks warmly before heading home deeper into the village. A guard approached Tiro and told him that the family only visited the village in spring and spent winters in the cities, explaining that the merchant sold woven fabrics from other regions. Tiro recalled the sadness he'd seen in the man's eyes and guessed that his trade hadn't gone well this season. He felt grateful for his own ability to gather resources easily and realized that he truly was one of the fortunate ones. He then headed to Jerome's shop, the collector of curiosities, to sell the materials he'd gathered, along with the mythal ore Jerome had requested earlier. Jerome examined the ore carefully, then looked up and declared that it wasn't ordinary mythal, it was rare magical mythal ore. Tiro feigned surprise, though he knew he'd mixed the types on purpose. Jerome explained that this ore was a legendary material unseen for generations, and that the amount Tiro brought was equal in power to all the country's magic stones combined. Tiro was amazed at his own skill's results, but chalked it up to luck. Jerome, however, was convinced he was dealing with a genius resource gatherer, even if the man lacked practical sense. Before they parted, Jerome advised him to travel to Belkheim City, saying it was the center of knowledge and trade, where people like Tiro could become famous and successful. Tiro thought it over, then agreed, deciding to begin a new chapter in his journey. That night, Tiro sat in his inn reading a massive encyclopedia about the world he was living in. He didn't know what the Adventurers Guild was, so he researched it carefully until he understood its system and purpose. He decided to officially join so he could become a registered adventurer, earning money while exploring this beautiful world. He also looked forward to traveling to Belkheim, though he chose to stay a bit longer in the village to wrap up some matters before leaving. At sunrise, he went to the butcher to process the monster meat he'd hunted in the forest. That evening, he invited all the villagers to a feast made from that meat. Everyone gathered around him happily, ate, and thanked him for his generosity. The next day, he ventured out to collect more herbs, planning to leave the following morning. He visited a woman's shop to buy some spices, and when she learned he was leaving, she sadly said everyone would miss him. She wished him luck and gave him provisions she'd made herself. The trip to Belkheim would take about a month, and though Tiro hadn't been in the village long, he had become well loved among its people. Back at the inn, he reflected on the mythal ore he still had left, since he hadn't sold it to Jerome. He sat thinking about what to do with it while Black dozed peacefully, tired from trying to think of something beyond his tiny mind. Then Tiro got an idea to use the precious metal to make something that could help the villagers. He fused the ore with magic and placed it in an oil lamp, which worked perfectly on the first try. At dawn, the villagers gathered at the gate to see him off. Smiles, tears, and well wishes filled the air, and Tiro thanked them all for their kindness. He brought out the magical lamp and handed it to the guard, explaining that it would create a protective barrier around the village to keep out people with ill intent. The concept, he said, was inspired by the merchant family's magical bell. The villagers hesitated to accept it, but he insisted, saying this place had become his home, and he wanted it to stay safe until he returned someday. As emotions began to overflow, Tiro quickly turned away with Black beside him, not wanting to linger in the weight of goodbyes. They set off on the road to Belkaim, surrounded by calm and the serenity of nature. But peace didn't last long. Just as Tiro commented on how nice the journey was, a massive creature resembling a giant crab blocked their path. He scanned it with a detection spell and discovered it was edible, so he prepared to hunt it, but before he could act, Black darted upward and let out a thunderous shriek that echoed through the forest, killing the crab instantly. Tiro was stunned by the power of his little companion, power he hadn't known before. Before he could collect the prey, more crabs appeared from afar. He thought they were slow-moving, but they came straight toward him with surprising speed. Black saved him at the last second, lifting him high, and the creatures crashed into each other, two of them dying instantly. Tiro landed and finished off the third with his magic staff. He gathered the spoils, built a fire, and used his hardened hand like a knife to slice the meat. Once the stew was ready, they both ate happily, and Tiro smiled at Black, telling him they'd continue their journey together, hunting strange creatures and enjoying food and companionship. After days of walking, they spotted a massive wall in the distance, touching the clouds, and Tiro was awestruck by its grandeur. It was the Wall of Belkaim, the great trade city of the Zero Kingdom, and the gateway to a new phase of his long adventure. Belkaim had originally begun as a small gathering spot for adventurers, but over time it grew into a mid-sized city teeming with skilled and seasoned fighters. As Tiro approached its towering walls, he used his scanning ability and discovered that it held the greatest adventurers guild in the Zero Kingdom, which fired up his excitement. He noticed a long line of people entering the city where their belongings and bodies were checked before they were allowed in, so he joined the line. When his turn came, he hid Black inside the bag and entered the inspection hall. The guard searched his bag but found nothing suspicious, then asked about his profession. Tiro replied that he was a materials collector. The guard thought he was there to sell goods, but Tiro explained that he wanted to join the guild. The guard used a magical device called Eiffel to reveal the entrance intentions and ensure the city's safety. The results showed that Tiro had no ill will. Curious about what others saw when they scanned him, Tiro tested the Eiffel on himself and found that it read him as having completely average abilities, marked with the color blue, meaning safe. He felt relieved that the skills he'd been granted didn't show up. However, the guard noticed something unusual labeled Dragon's Blessing and asked about it. Tiro brought out Black, explaining that he was his companion, gifted to him by an ancient dragon. The guard didn't object, but asked for proof of ownership. Tiro showed a bracelet given to him by children in a village, claiming it as a sign of ownership. The guard accepted that, but said he would notify the local governor about the dragon's presence in the city. Tiro agreed without objection. Then the guard gave him directions to the guild. Stepping out into the street, Tiro's eyes widened at the vibrant life of Belkaim, the crowded markets, fragrant smells, and the lively bustle of traders and adventurers. He spotted a large rectangular building bearing the guild's emblem and went inside. He looked lost for a moment until a lady named Ariana approached, greeting him with a smile. She explained the place, saying he could trade and connect with others there, but he told her he came to register officially as an adventurer. She sat down to process his registration and handed him the application form. Though fluent in reading and speaking Belkaim's language, he wasn't confident in writing it. But when he wrote using his own native script, the letters automatically turned into local ones, which delighted him. He wrote on the form that he was a resource collector, aiming to become an adventurer. Ariana asked about his combat experience, and he mentioned the creatures he had fought. She asked for proof, so he pulled out the giant crab he had just slain. Ariana screamed in shock and called for other adventurers. One of them stepped forward and scanned Tiro with an owl-shaped tool that glowed blue, meaning he wasn't dangerous. Tiro asked what the color meant, and the man explained that blue signified safety. They assumed he came to sell crab shells, but he clarified that he was here to register and planned to eat the crab rather than sell it. The crowd was astonished they hadn't known such creatures could be eaten, and their admiration for him grew. When asked if he had someone with him, he introduced Black, and silence fell in shock. Seeing a person with a dragon, even a small one, was a rare sight. One adventurer invited him to join their team, but Tiro ignored the offer, satisfied with the strong impression he'd already made. Ariana completed the registration and handed him a rank F adventurer badge. He pinned it proudly on his chest, noticing it resembled Black's bracelet. They lightly tapped their badges together, smiling in sync, ready for upcoming adventures in bustling Belkaim. A few days later, Tiro managed to find the family of the warrior whose corpse he had discovered in the Tormy forest. He returned the man's old belongings, and when his family recognized them, they burst into tears. The news hit them hard. Seeing their weakness and illness, Tiro remembered what the city guard had once told him about their hardships. When Tiro entered Belkaim, he had asked about the warrior whose body he'd found earlier, having learned his name from a letter among his belongings, Bill Rhea. The guard told him Bill Rhea had gone on a mission to buy medicine for his ailing father but never returned. Tiro realized the poor man must have died during that mission, which filled him with sorrow and compelled him to do something kind for the family to ease their pain. After helping them, he went to the Adventurers Guild to trade some herbs he had gathered with a furred merchant who looked like a fox. While they talked, Ariana was secretly watching from behind the wall. The fox noticed her long ears poking out and asked if something was wrong. She nervously stepped forward and said she'd received a pile of requests from clients, specifically asking for Tiro to take on their jobs, proof that his reputation had spread quickly through the city. Tiro hesitated to accept them all, so he took half and promised to complete them soon. After selling his materials, he went to the bathhouse to relax with Black. Half a month had passed since he arrived in Belkaim, and everything was going smoothly. He remembered his first visit to that public bath when the water was murky, and he'd purified it with cleansing magic until it became crystal clear. Since then, he'd gone there daily to wash off his fatigue. That day, a beastman named Klee approached him, saying he'd heard rumors that Tiro possessed great healing magic. Tiro asked for details, and Klee explained that people were talking about how Tiro had healed a sick man in the slums using magic. It was true Tiro had used healing magic on Bilria's father and family, restoring their health and strength. Tiro admitted it calmly, saying it wasn't a big deal. Klee asked if he'd been paid, and when he learned Tiro had done it for free, he laughed, surprised that someone so kind could exist in such a harsh world. Klee advised him to raise his guild rank so he could take on tougher missions and earn more, but Tiro said he was perfectly content with his current rank. He wasn't seeking money or fame. This worried Klee, who warned him that detachment from worldly things might draw unwanted attention or envy. A few days later, Tiro returned to his usual guild routine, trading what he'd collected. The fox merchant begged him again to raise his rank, insisting that someone with his skills deserved higher-level missions. But once again, Tiro refused, preferring a quiet life. Amid all that, an alarm suddenly rang through the city. Hordes of goblins were advancing toward the walls. Adventurers of rank D and above were mobilized to defend the city, while Tiro tried to slip away since he was technically a low rank. But the guildmaster, Rotor, caught him and dragged him along, fully aware of Tiro's true strength. Rotor laid out a plan to stop the goblins before they crossed the nearby river and gave a rousing speech that fired everyone up. The adventurer teams moved to the battlefield and set up camp atop a mountain ridge to watch all directions. Tiro stayed at the rear with a girl named Muselli, who was trembling with fear at the growls of surrounding monsters. He noticed her unease and tried to calm her down, reminding her that her role as a field healer was critical and that she needed to focus on treating the wounded. He reassured her that fear of the unknown was natural, but people only prove their existence by facing it. Muselli was moved by his words, and a new determination ignited within her. She vowed to do her part with all her strength once the battle began. Klee was also in the camp, and when Tiro saw him, he asked why he was staying in the rear instead of going to the front lines. Klee said he had a deep wound on his back, and among warriors, such a wound was seen as shameful because it meant being injured while fleeing from the enemy. Tiro disagreed, saying that wounds come for many reasons, not all of them cowardly. It was clear from flashbacks that Klee had received that wound while protecting someone else. Tiro told him what really mattered was that he was still alive after such an injury. Klee gave a bitter laugh, wishing the world could see things as Tiro did. Just then, a sudden alarm blared from the front lines. Goblins had broken through the defenses and were heading straight toward Tiro's position. Klee stood up, saying it was time to do what must be done, and bid Tiro farewell before rushing into battle. Looking around, Tiro saw Muselli treating an injured soldier, encouraging him to stay strong with surprising courage. The sight impressed him just minutes ago. She had been trembling behind him, and now her bravery filled him with new strength. He activated his magic armor and raised a barrier around the camp, telling everyone to stay safe until he returned with Klee. Then he grabbed his staff and left. When he reached the battlefield, he strengthened his legs and arms and lunged into a group of goblins, taking them down swiftly. He noticed another team surrounded on all sides and joined them, asking what was happening. They told him they had been attacked by a higher type of goblin, led by a fierce commander who destroyed the first defensive line, and that without Klee, they would have been wiped out. But they'd lost track of him during the fight. Tiro grew worried, realizing Klee must be fighting alone, and dashed off to find him. He found him shortly after, locked in a bloody battle, struggling under the weight of both old and new wounds. Tiro rushed to his side, clearing away some of the attackers to give him breathing room. Klee, angry, asked why he had come. It was too dangerous for someone of his rank. Tiro replied that Klee was the one injured and couldn't keep going like that, urging him to retreat. But Klee refused, saying retreating would open the way for the goblins to attack the city. He insisted on staying and told Tiro to leave, explaining that the goblin commander would follow him wherever he went. Tiro stood watching him fight in pain, feeling sorrow as he saw blood covering his body. The thought of fully healing him crossed his mind, but that would mean touching the wound on his back. He asked if that wound held any special meaning or significance. Klee replied that it was nothing but a reminder of an old folly. Then Tiro summoned Black to fend off the demons and buy them some time, before taking out the magic elemental water from his bag and pouring it over Klee's body. Klee didn't understand what was happening, but he felt immense power surging through his veins, and a spark of excitement reigniting within him. He turned to Tiro in shock, asking what he had done. Tiro told him he had only healed him, but what Klee felt was far beyond simple recovery. Still, it wasn't the right time to talk, so Klee charged back into battle with burning determination, tearing through the demons with his claws in a sweeping assault that ended with their victory. While Klee kept fighting, one of the adventurers approached Tiro, having seen what he did, and asked what kind of magic he used. Tiro downplayed it, saying it was just simple healing, but the adventurer didn't believe him, and asked who he really was. Tiro said he was an F-rank adventurer who only wanted to help, though suspicion lingered in the man's eyes. Since Tiro had saved them that day, the adventurers didn't want to show doubt toward him. They accepted his words and expressed their gratitude, assuring him the guild would reward him appropriately. Tiro returned to his inn, thinking life would soon go back to its usual calm, but his peace didn't last long. Klee came to him after fully recovering. Klee knew what Tiro had done to him wasn't normal healing, so he asked him directly what he had used. Tiro answered that he had healed him using the element of water, explaining that its source came from an ancient dragon. He even told him about Black, and that her mother was that great subterranean dragon. Klee believed him and asked why he would spend such a powerful element on him. Tiro simply replied that it wasn't worth worrying about, though he added to himself that the real reason was that he had plenty of that precious water. Klee sincerely thanked him for what he had done, then asked who he really was and where he came from. Tiro was surprised by the question, remembering the warning he'd been given not to reveal his origin, but he also didn't want his silence to raise suspicion. He hesitated for a long time until Klee noticed his confusion, and gently told him he didn't have to answer, then started to leave. But Tiro stopped him and said that he trusted him and would tell him the truth. He confessed that he had come from another world, that he'd been transported here after dying in his previous one, as if he'd been reborn. Klee smiled, thinking it was just a light-hearted joke, shaking his head in disbelief, but thanked him for his honesty anyway. He went on to explain that what Tiro had done to him was so powerful that his body had momentarily transformed into a dragonut, the highest form of the lizardman race. He had felt an overwhelming surge of power that nearly made him lose control. Even so, he expressed deep gratitude for experiencing the primal strength his kind descended from. Calm as ever, Tiro asked if he had returned to normal. Klee said yes, so Tiro advised him to train in that form so he could learn to control his power. Klee stared at him, puzzled by his composure, saying that this calm nature of his was both admirable and perplexing. Then he said his goodbyes and left. Tiro stepped out into the city streets and saw the bustle of life, the noise of merchants, and the movement of people at every corner. He remembered how much his life had changed since he'd come to this world. As he walked, he saw a weapon shop and stopped, his eyes caught by the gleam of steel behind the glass. The shopkeeper called to him from inside, and Tiro turned with genuine excitement and joy. Takeru asked Ripple if they sold such scissors, but Ripple told him no. Then Ripple asked Takeru if he was the material collector that everyone was talking about, and when she confirmed this, she introduced herself to Takeru and told him that she could also help him, which surprised Takeru. Then Ripple confirmed that they had a master named Grossus, who was a top-notch blacksmith, but he had to bring something the master was looking for. However, Takeru asked if he could know the details. Then they moved to the blacksmith workshop, and Takeru watched the workers making iron, which amazed him greatly. Ripple was also happy and wanted to become like her master, and her dream was to make a sword worthy of a great hero. Then they moved to the master's room and entered. Then Grossus asked Ripple who this was, and Ripple introduced Takeru to Grossus as the resource collector. Then Takeru greeted Grossus, but Grossus told Takeru that he had a very big reputation, which made Takeru grateful to Grossus. However, Ripple thought that Takeru could possibly provide them with Dura ore to make the sword that they would enter in the craftsman's exhibition. But Grossus objected to sending Takeru to the Ryohei mine because it was very dangerous. However, Ripple objected to Grossus's disapproval and told Grossus that Takeru was capable of doing this, but Grossus insisted on his position, which led to an argument between them. Then Ripple grabbed Grossus by his beard and told him to make swords from inferior materials, but after that he wouldn't be called a master. However, Grossus was annoyed by Ripple's words and told her that the mine didn't only have monsters, but there were also rumors about the presence of demons. Ripple also heard some talk about a shortage of Dura ore due to the appearance of demons. Then Grossus said to Takeru that Ripple was a blacksmith who didn't value life and didn't deserve to hold a hammer. Then he also told Ripple that he wouldn't send a young man to his death just because they were in trouble. Then Ripple apologized to Takeru and asked him to forget what she had told him. After that, Takeru presented sweets to Grossus and asked him if the ore he wanted to make swords was in the dangerous Ryohei mine. Then Takeru made an attractive offer to Grossus that if he collected Dura ore for him, he would make him scissors that only he would use, which surprised Grossus, and he was amazed by what Takeru said. Then Takeru told them that he could handle anything and showed them a part of a huge monster, which shocked Grossus and Ripple. Ripple said that this monster could only be killed by a B-rank adventurer or higher. Therefore, Takeru asked Grossus to let him handle this task. Then Takeru went to the mine, and while he was on the way, the Dragon Black was humming songs, and Takeru was locating the mine area. Then the Dragon Black approached Takeru and asked him for crab, but Takeru told him that nothing was left, and that he also wanted to eat it again. There was a man and a woman with Takeru in the carriage. The woman talked about strange things happening recently, such as all the poisonous herbs in the Robroy's passage withering overnight. The man also heard about strange disturbances in the tree forests as well. Here Takeru wondered if all this happened because of him, but he didn't believe it. Then Takeru got off the carriage carriage in front of a horse trader's headquarters, and Takeru heard a woman's voice arguing with someone, but Takeru had heard this voice before. Then we move to the woman who was arguing and asking the trader that she wanted a pure white horse that runs across the sky, but this was a giant white crow, and she pointed to the white animal. However, the trader told Prolite that this was a horse shop, and anything that could transport things they called a horse, whether it was a giant eagle or a white crow, which made Prolite feel embarrassed. She told the trader that she exaggerated her expression, but the trader told her that it was okay, and that no harm was done, and that he should have checked himself. He told her that if she wanted a winged steed, she would find it in Vorzal. However, Prolite wondered if this place was the Dwarf Kingdom. Then Prolite moved there, but Takeru was also going to the same place. Then Takeru asked Black to go slowly and collect some materials on the way, which made Black happy. Then they moved to the forest, and Takeru found a lot of Norit's mushrooms, and it was a real treasure of ingredients. Then he looked in another direction and found Moonlit Night Herb, and was surprised that it was present in large quantities. Then Takeru picked the herb and thought that it took longer than expected, but the results were worth it. However, Prolite was lying on the ground in a state of great fatigue and exhaustion. When Takeru approached her, Prolite asked Takeru to give her water. Then Takeru provided water and food to Prolite until she regained her strength. When she came forward to thank him, her smell was very bad, which annoyed Takeru, and he cast a cleanliness spell on her, which amazed Prolite, and she wondered what was happening to her. However, Takeru told her that he couldn't see the delicate goddess in a state of weakness. Then Prolite introduced herself to Takeru, and Takeru also told Prolite his name. However, Prolite asked Takeru to let her return the favor, but Takeru told her that he didn't expect anything in return and was about to leave. However, Prolite told him that she shouldn't neglect what he did for her, but Takeru wanted to leave, but Prolite appeared in front of him and offered to help him with what he was doing. Black welcomed her very much, and Prolite thought the dragon agreed to her joining them. Then Takeru agreed to her joining them and told her that she would be with them until they reached the next town. Takeru continued collecting resources, and Prolite came to him and told him she found something important. When she showed this thing to him, Takeru told her it was just a rock, which shocked her. When she showed him something else, Takeru told her it was feces, but she continued showing him things until she showed him a poisonous mushroom. When Takeru revealed to her that it was a poisonous mushroom, she and Black started laughing. Here Takeru thought her mind matched Black's mind a lot. After that, night fell on them, and Prolite told Takeru that she would go to get some firewood to light the fire. However, Takeru told Prolite that he had a stone that would serve the purpose. But Prolite told Takeru that this stone was very important and that she would go get the firewood, and she left. Then she returned to them with a tree trunk, which surprised Takeru. However, Prolite told him it would serve the purpose, and threw the trunk upward, and flew high, and directed several strikes at the trunk with her weapon, which turned it into a large amount of firewood. Then she landed on the ground, which amazed Takeru, and he was more amazed by Prolite's weapon, and examined it. He was astonished when he learned that this weapon was A rank, because it was the first time he saw one up close. After that, Takeru prepared food for them, and Prolite was very hungry, and so was Black. When Prolite ate the food, she was very amazed because it was delicious, and thanked him for the food a lot because it tasted wonderful. Black also liked the food, which made Takeru laugh at their behavior. Then Prolite asked Takeru if he was also heading to Vorzal. Takeru said he was going there to search for Dura ore from the mine. Then Prolite asked why she was going there. Then Prolite remembered something and told him that she was going there to find the white-winged horse that her sister Ryutkara longed for. But Takeru's hair ruined the mood. But Prolite told Takeru that she had eaten his food again, and that returning the favor increases every minute. Then Takeru offered Prolite to hire her as a warrior to protect him, which surprised Prolite, and she asked Takeru, "Do you want me to protect you, my lord, from the evil ones, right?" Takeru confirmed this, and told her that he also wanted someone to do other things for him, like the campfire trick. But Prolite was shocked by Takeru's requests because they were very simple requests. But she saw that the reasons that brought them together were a good sign for her, and Prolite agreed to Takeru's offer and told him that she would be his personal guard, and they shook hands. Then Prolite and Black went to sleep, but Takeru couldn't sleep because of the sound of their snoring. The next day, they continued advancing until they reached the river, and Prolite told Takeru that the Dwarf Kingdom is located beyond this river, and this is the Ryohei mountain range. But Takeru saw that the mountains resembled the Hotaka mountains in his homeland. Then they moved to a restaurant, and meat dishes were served to them from the restaurant, and Takeru started eating the meat, and it tasted very good. Prolite was also amazed by the taste of the meat, and said it was delicious, as her friend said. Takeru asked Prolite if her friend was also from the elves, but Prolite's friend was from the lizards. But Takeru told her that he knows a man from the lizards too. Then Prolite spoke the name of her lizard friend, who is the honorary dragon king, and he is a sacred dragon knight, and he is now heading to Belkayim. Prolite believed that Takeru had met him before. Then someone spoke from behind Takeru, and told Prolite that the matter is deeper than just a meeting. Then Takeru looked behind him, and saw Clay sitting eating food too. Then Clay told them that my girlfriend's friend is now my friend, and Prolite missed Clay a lot. But Clay said to Takeru that he left town without telling him. But Takeru told Clay that he told the guild that he would be away for a while. But Clay told him that he was still mysterious, and asked him, "Where are you heading?" When Clay learned that Takeru was going to the mine, he told him that this mine is dangerous and not suitable for his rank. But Takeru saw that Grossus was in trouble, trouble and that he couldn't ignore this. But Clay told Takero that this place is very dangerous and that he must get a big reward or he will regret it. But Takero assured Clay that he would get a big reward and that Grossus promised him that he would make him a set of absolute scissors. Clay was surprised, but Takero wanted to win the favor of a very skilled blacksmith because he might get a cooking pot or a fancy frying pan. But Clay doesn't know if he's kind-hearted or naive. But for Takero, scissors are better than a sword because he's a resource gatherer. Then Takero thought they should go, but Brolight wanted to eat dessert. But Takero asked, how much can you eat? Then Clay said he would accompany them too, which surprised Takero. But Clay will go there to fix his spear too. But Brolight thought that Clay would be another guard for Takero, which annoyed Takero from saying this. But Clay asked with surprise, is Brolight a personal guard? Brolight said that she is Takero's personal guard, and he is on his way to Vos Raoul. But Clay joined them as a personal guard to Takero too. But Takero thought that Clay is a very grumpy old man, and that Brolight is a hopeless elf, but they are very skilled. Then they moved to the city entrance, but there was a large number of people waiting. But Clay was talking to one of the guards, and after that Clay pointed to his friends. And after that they were able to enter, which surprised Takero. Then he asked class, how did you let us in? But Clay told him that he greeted one of his friends. When they saw the entire city, they felt amazed by this because it's an underground city. But the guard told Clay that the king wants to see him. But Takero asked Clay if he has a relationship with the king. But Clay told Takero that it's a complicated relationship. But the guard told Takero that Clay is the one who saved them from the attack of the Thunder King Zingun. But Clay told Takero that the matter is not that important, and also told him that the dwarves are skilled in blacksmithing and incapable of using weapons, and they were forced to pay tribute to the demon lord. But when the demon saw Clay, he fled. Then they continued walking, and the guard said that because of their admiration for Clay, they created this statue for him, which amazed everyone. But Clay asked him to excuse him from this. But Takero told Clay that the statue doesn't look like you, so don't be embarrassed. Then we moved to the king's headquarters, and the king said to Clay that he hasn't seen him in a long time. But Clay asked the king, what's the story of this statue outside? But the king thought it was great. But Clay approached the king and asked him, why did you make it? And he felt angry, and Brolight saw that the king and Clay are very close. Then Takero spoke and welcomed the king, and introduced himself to him, and told him that he has a message for him. Then the king's assistant read the letter and told the king that it was from Grossus the blacksmith, and the king knew him well. Then the king's assistant continued reading the letter, and told the king that Grossus wants the king to approve Takero's going to the Ryohei mine. But the king told Takero that months ago, that mine became a haven for demons, after the earth was shaken by a big tremor. And the king asked Takero, are you aware of something like this, and insist on entering the mine too? But Takero confirmed that he wants this too. Then Clay intervened in the conversation, and told the king that Takero is under his protection, and this elf warrior Brolight is skilled in combat too, so there's no need to worry. Here the king was reassured because Clay is with him. Then the king assigned Clay and his friends to explore the mine and the truth about the demons. But Clay agreed to this, but Takero said he doesn't agree, and that he just wants to collect some draw ore materials. But Clay agreed again to that, which annoyed Takero. Then they moved to the mine entrance. Then a guard named Zambo joined them, and he will be their guide inside the mine. Then Zambo opened the door for them, but Brolight saw that the place is dark. But Takero cast a spell to light up the place. Then he received the map from Zambo and cast a reading spell to understand what's in it, which amazed Brolight that he cast 2 spells at once. But Clay asked Takero not to do strange things again. But Takero didn't pay attention to their talk and searched for draw ore in the place, and several types of mineral ores appeared to him, but their signals are very weak. Then Zambo approached Takero and asked him if he notices this just by looking. But Takero asked them to penetrate inside a little, but Black felt something, which made everyone ready to fight. But Clay asked Takero to stay behind them because there's something coming to them, but they don't see it. But Takero cast a search spell until a strange body approaching them appeared. Then 2 monsters attacked them, and Clay attacked the first one and killed it. Then Takero cast a spell that fixed the other one in place, and asked Brolight to finish it off. And Brolight succeeded in this, but she felt happy and asked Takero how he was able to use this wonderful spell. After that they continued advancing, and Takero expected that the magic concentration here is strong, and there are traces of draw ore too in some places. But Takero stopped and headed to a dead end, but there were draw ores that he needed. Then Takero asked Zambo to use his special method of extracting minerals, and asked them to stay away from the walls. Then Takero cast his magic and used fire too, and blew up the walls until a large amount of draw ore appeared to him, which amazed Zambo. But this ore is drite, and it's very rare. Then Takero examined it and found that Zambo was right. Also, Clay felt a large magical energy, and it almost seems to be a magic stone too. But Takero thought there was a pocket containing a magic core in this tunnel. Then Black told Takero about something coming, which shocked Takero. Then the rest approached Takero and Brolight asked about the matter. When they heard a sound, Clay asked, "What is this sound?" But Zambo told them that this is the cursed demon. But Takero asked them to let him. He will take care of this monster. But Clay saw that this is madness from him. But Takero told them that he needs this. Then the monster appeared to them, and it's a giant crab, which made Takero and Black very happy. Black felt happy when he saw the monster because it was a crab, and he approached Takero, but Takero also drooled because he loves crabs very much, which led to Clay and Brolite being very astonished by Black and Takero's behavior. Takero started celebrating, but Clay told him that this wasn't the time to celebrate. Brolite asked him to be careful, which led to the monster directing a strike at Takero, but Takero succeeded in dodging it. Both Clay and Brolite wanted to summon many guards because of this huge monster, but Takero signaled them to stop calling anyone, and his eyes gleamed because this monster was an ideal main dish for him. After that, Takero asked Black to support him in attacking the monster and pulled out a staff from his bag. When Black supported Takero, Takero attacked quickly, and Black also fired sound waves to hit the monster. Takero flew high and directed a strong strike at the monster, but it didn't affect it. The monster succeeded in directing a strike at Takero as well, but it didn't affect him. After that, Takero examined the monster to find its weak point, and when he found it, he summoned ice arrows and directed them at the monster, which led to the monster freezing completely. The others were in a state of shock. Then Clay approached Takero and Black and asked them, "Why did you fight alone?" He was very angry, but Takero told Clay that they got a little excited and thought that if he used weapons covered in mud and blood, it might ruin the edible parts of the crab. But Clay was surprised that Takero wanted to eat it and also asked about his role. Takero told him that he was his personal guard, but Takero admitted that he was more experienced in fighting these creatures. Clay confirmed this because Takero's magic was amazing, but in moments like these, you must stay with your friends and cooperate with them in fighting, and he should rely on him more than this. Takero apologized to Clay for this, but Clay accepted their apology. After that, he asked them to take this crab outside. After that, Takero was able to collect a large amount of the materials he wanted, and told Zambo that he felt there was another quantity, but if he went deeper inside. But Zambo felt extremely happy because Takero killed the monster and found them a treasure of minerals. Here, Takero remembered that earthquakes and land distortions and monsters wake up from the magic core, and perhaps purifying the magical bean core had a bigger effect than expected, and the behavior in places touched by that, this must be what he meant when he said, "One drop could change the world." Then Brolite called Takero and asked him to return. Then they moved to the king again, and Takero told the king that he had purified the entire mine and asked him to be reassured now, which led to the king's astonishment. But the king asked Zambro if this was true. Zambo confirmed it, and that he saw everything with his own eyes, and that Takero killed the monster very easily, and asked him to make the king see the monster. But Takero got Clay's approval first, then agreed to this. Then Takero opened his bag and took out the monster, which led to the king's astonishment. Then the king approached the monster, and saw that a monster like this had a terrifying presence, and thanked Takero because he succeeded in killing it, and that he should be rewarded. But Takero suggested taking this demon as his reward, and the king was surprised by this request. Then Takero, Clay, and Brolite moved to the market, and Borlite saw that 3 million riff was a good reward, but for Takero and Black, food was the most important thing to them. But Clay asked Takero what he was thinking about, but Takero thought that maybe he could use its shell to make scissors. The next day, the rewards were presented to Borlite as a flying horse, and Clay also received a new shiny spear, and Clay really liked it. Then Borlite rode the horse and said she would go now to her homeland to make her sister happy because of this horse. She told Takero that she owed him a great debt that even if she spent her whole life, she couldn't repay. But Takero told her that he got the crab in return, so they were even. Then Clay told Takero that their carriage had arrived. Then they said goodbye to Brolite, and Brolite also said goodbye to them. She flew high with the horse and told them from above to watch their necks when they meet again. Then Takero and Clay moved to the guild, and guild employee Ariana welcomed them and asked them if they had formed a team, just the two of them. Takero was about to tell her that they were just on a small trip, but Clay told Ariana that they were indeed one team, which made Ariana happy, and she told them she would go tell Weed about this great news. But Clay said this because Takero didn't mind, and also told him that he was a traveler with no specific destination, and that he knew Takero wasn't an ordinary human, and having someone like him watch his strange tendencies wasn't a bad idea. Takero thought Clay's words were somewhat insulting, but Black felt happy about this. But Takero said to himself that Clay tends to preach, but traveling with him might not be bad. After a big discussion, they suggested a name for their team, which was the Dark Blue Brigade. After that, Takero and Black moved to Grossus's workshop and gave the diet jacket to Grossus to examine it, but they didn't speak out of shock, which led Takero to think it wasn't him. But Grossus and Ribble were extremely astonished, and Ribble was happy that she assigned this task to Takero because this material was very hard and ideal. They were crying a lot, but Grossus asked Ribble not to cry, and Ribble made the same request to Grossus, and they hugged each other. Here Takeru felt happy because they were pleased with this material. Grossus said he had never seen this quantity of materials in one place. Takeru said to himself that he knew the quality of the materials was high, but he didn't expect them to be so impressed by it. Even if the inspection showed it was perfect, you never know if it truly truly meets what the customer wants. But the most important thing in the market is to fulfill what the customer wants. Now Takeru began to feel proud of being a collector. Ribble said to Takeru that this quantity was large, and she couldn't give him his due, but Takeru told them he only wanted the scissors he requested, and would settle this part later. But now he wanted them to use these materials, and make an amazing sword that would win first prize at the exhibition. After a month and a half, we moved to the tavern where he was having happy moments with Class in Black. Then Wade came to him and told him he had been looking for him, and gave him a letter because he had been summoned by an important person. Clay thought from the seal's emblem that this summons was from House Lucilphus. Takeru asked Wade if this was from Lord Belkame, but Takeru said to himself he thought trouble was on the way, then said out loud that he would get a stomachache tomorrow and wouldn't be able to go. But Clay asked him to stop making pathetic excuses. Wade told Takeru that the Lord was kind and not hated at all. Then Takeru opened the letter to read it, and Clay discovered he was also mentioned in the letter. Wade told them the Lord had heard about their team's name, and decided to summon the entire team. Takeru said this honor seemed more like a pretext for something, but Clay thought he should have shouted his desire to see the small dragon. Takeru asked if the Lord was planning to take Black, but Wade told Takeru that the Lord would never do that, and it wasn't within his authority either. Clay confirmed that if he did that, he would leave Belkame with him immediately, but Takeru thought they would head to the coast and treat themselves to fresh sashimi. Meanwhile, Wade said to them, "You intend to eat monster meat again?" Then we moved to Clay and Takeru in the Lord's carriage. The carriage was attracting everyone's attention, and Takeru was aware of this. But Clay thought this was because every adventurer dreams of being summoned to the Lord's palace, because everything changes if any adventurer gets his support. Even a chaotic adventurer gains credibility when guaranteed by a noble. Takeru understood this, and saw it was logical. Then Clay told Takeru they were entering the noble's district now, which amazed Takeru and Black by the view. Then they arrived at the palace, and the head butler welcomed them. He told them he would be their guide inside the palace and introduced himself as Raymond, and gestured for them to enter. There were servants receiving and welcoming them, which amazed Takeru. While they were on their way, a small girl came to them and said to them, "So you're the dragon child," and told Takeru that this dragon belonged to her. But Takeru refused. But the girl said dragons belong to nobles, and told Takeru he wasn't even a noble to own a dragon, which annoyed Takeru. But Clay knew this was Princess Tiaris. Then Takeru did an inspection on her to identify her, and discovered she was the Lord's daughter, and wondered how to deal with her. Then Takeru knelt before Tiaris, and asked her permission to ask a question. When she agreed, Takeru asked Tiaris, "Why do you think you have the right to this dragon?" But Tiaris answered him embarrassedly, that Bernard told her about an adventurer keeping a dragon, so it was natural for her to get it. Here, Takeru knew that Mr. Bernard was the one who told her. Tiaris also said that when dealing with rude and ignorant adventurers, she must act with dignity and firmness, so they obey her. Takeru asked himself, who is Bernard, because he's responsible for this. Then Takeru apologized to Tiaris because Black was part of his family and he couldn't hand him over to anyone. Then Tiaris asked the dragon if he was called Black. Black responded to her, which surprised Tiaris that the dragon responded to her. Takeru told Tiaris that Black understands human language. Tiaris felt very embarrassed because she treated them very harshly without thinking about their bond, and apologized to them. This led to Black approaching Tiaris. Tiaris asked Black if he forgave her, and when she confirmed this, she immediately hugged him. Then Takeru asked Tiaris, "Why do you want to own a dragon?" But Tiaris wanted to show him to her mother, and that it was very important. Then the Lord came to them and asked Tiaris, "What are you doing?" Then Takeru introduced himself to the Lord. The Lord introduced himself also to Takeru and said he was called Lucilphus, and they shook hands with each other. Then they moved to the sitting room, and tea was served to them. Lucilphus apologized to Takeru for his daughter's way of dealing, but Takeru told him there was no problem about this. Clay asked what they were summoned for, but Lucilphus told them there was one thing and only one he summoned them for, and that it concerned his wife Muleteria. Clay explained to Takeru that the lady had been bedridden for about half a year. Lucilphus told Takeru he had heard rumors about him, that a weak tenant suddenly regained his health because of his work, which led to Takeru boasting a lot. Then Lucilphus begged Takeru to save his wife from death. Takeru said his magic was strong enough to purify Clay, and that if he upset the balance, who knows what would happen. But Lucilphus said that Tiaris wanted a dragon for her mother. After a few days, Tiaris would leave for the royal capital to study. She thought a cute creature beside her mother would raise her spirits, and that her heart is kind despite her naivety sometimes, which made Clay cry when he heard this. Black also cried. But Takeru said to himself that this was a lord, and if he made a mistake, he would be drowned in problems. Then Takeru asked, "Where is Lady Muleteria?" This made Lucilphus happy that Takeru agreed, but Takeru said to himself that he was a big fool. Then they moved to Muleteria's room. Takeru saw that the room hadn't been ventilated for a while. Black also felt this. But Lucilphus approached Muleteria and told her he had brought the man he told her about, who heals diseases with mysterious power. He asked Takeru to come forward. Then Takeru asked to light the room, but Lucilphus told him that Muleteria was sensitive to sunlight. Then Takeru approached to take a look at her and began using inspection. He discovered she was suffering from many diseases. Then Clay approached Takeru and asked him if he knew what was wrong with her. Takeru answered to some extent. Lucilphus asked Takeru, "Can you treat her?" But Takeru could treat diseases like light sensitivity, joint pain, stomach pain, and dizziness too, which amazed Lucilphus. But Takeru found poisoning by Eifer, and he had never heard of it before. He said to himself even if he couldn't treat it with his magic, treating the rest of the diseases would help her. But Clay asked Takeru, "What's the matter?" Takeru said it was a matter of trust, and that he was just an unknown adventurer, and asked Lucilphus, "Will you leave your wife's matter to me?" But Lucilphus couldn't answer. But Muleteria said she would do whatever Lucilphus decided, but she wanted to hug Tiaris again, and she cried and said that was enough for her. Then Lucilphus cried and begged Takeru to save Muleteria. Here Takeru became very enthusiastic. Clay thought that Takeru would use the same technique he had used to heal him, but Takeru didn't do that because the spell consumed an enormous amount of internal mana. Takeru believed that Muleteer wouldn't be able to endure it, so he decided to start by healing Muleteer's eye since she felt pain when she saw light. Takeru then cast a healing spell on her eye, and once he was done, he asked her to open it. When she opened her eye, Takeru asked her if she could see well. When she signaled that her vision was fine, Takeru cleaned the whole room and opened the windows, letting sunlight pour in. Lucilphus asked Muleteer if she felt any pain, but she told him she was fine, and then she started crying. Lucilphus also cried out of pure happiness. Clay could see that Takeru had succeeded. However, Takeru thought about moving to another place. After they moved, Takeru discovered that Muleteer had eaten something poisoned with a substance called Iver poison. Lucilphus refused to believe it. Takeru said there was a possibility that it had been done on purpose, as it seemed deliberate, but since Takeru didn't know how the poison worked, he couldn't completely cure her. He asked Lucilphus if he could get an antidote, but Lucilphus said there was none because the poison was forbidden and had disappeared over time, along with the antidote. Takeru suggested making an antidote himself, saying it might be possible if they could get the original poison. Clay noted that if they could actually make it, then it must be a very ancient poison, and he wasn't sure if its ingredients still existed today. Lucilphus said there might be a clue somewhere, so they started searching through books. Lucilphus told them most of the books were written in the ancient language, but Takeru could read and translate that. He did, though, have trouble identifying the name Iver poison. After examining more closely, he cast the Buska spell, which revealed the book he needed. When he opened it, he told the others that it contained information about the Iver flower. Lucilphus asked Takeru to read aloud. Takeru prepared himself, brought the book closer to his face, and began reading, but his voice sounded different, funny, almost playful as he read a story about a boy named Bola, who was apparently a cheerful adventurer. The book described his amazing travel diaries. Clay asked if Takeru was mocking them, but Takeru said he was reading exactly what was written. Lucilphus told him to continue. Bola's story went on about a sunny day, when he was relaxing on a rock shaped like a horse near a big lake, where he found the most beautiful golden flower. It turned out to be the Iver flower, but Clay suddenly stopped Takeru from reading further, saying he knew that exact place, the rock shaped like a horse near the lake. Lucilphus was surprised, and Clay pointed out the location on a map, saying it was in a village called Ashit. Lucilphus told him it was outside their country, and that traveling there would take about 5 days by carriage. Takeru suggested they go right away. As they prepared to depart, Bernard watched them from afar, and sent a bird to keep an eye on them. Meanwhile, Takeru placed a stone on the ground, surprising Clay, who asked what he was doing. Takeru said he was setting it so that no one would harm Muleteer while they were away. Then Tiaris came running toward Takeru, and apologized for treating him rudely, even though he was the one saving her mother. Takeru told her that yes, she had treated him harshly, but that was something to be proud of, because she realized her mistake on her own. He told her that in time, she'd learn to listen to others before judging them, and that would help her a lot in life. Tiaris started crying, and Takeru also advised her to always think things through and take her time. She promised she would. Takeru also told her that in his absence, someone might tell her he was evil or a liar, and if that happened, she shouldn't respond immediately, but should speak with her father first. He said that's called reporting, communication, and consultation. Then Takeru, Clay, and Black set off. Takeru cast a speed spell on the horses, and they instantly moved faster. Later, they stopped for a meal and then continued traveling. When they arrived at the village, it was deserted. Takeru, confused, asked, "Wasn't there a village here?" Clay replied that the last time he passed through, it had been a fertile farmland. They kept walking, and Takeru thought maybe it hadn't rained in a long time and that the lake had dried up. But Clay didn't think so. He'd been there not long ago, and it wasn't like this. They finally reached a large lake, and Takeru wondered what had happened to the place. Clay said it had been beautiful the last time he saw it. Takeru approached the lake to inspect it and suspected everything had been arranged intentionally. Then some farmers appeared, and he asked what they were doing. Takeru introduced himself and his companions, explaining they were adventurers from Belkheim collecting rare materials. The farmers were surprised that they'd come from so far away, and asked them to prove they were from the guild. Clay showed them his bracelet, confirming their membership. Takeru was about to ask about the Iver flower when a boy with the farmers collapsed. Takeru quickly went to him and asked if they were eating well. Then he asked what exactly had happened in this place. Then the farmers went and took Takeru and his his group to meet the rest of the farmers. They told him that about 10 months ago, something strange had happened. The color of the lake had changed, and the well water had gone bad too. That's when a merchant named Angash showed up and saved the village, offering help in exchange for a shiny golden flower that grew near the lake. The flower looked like the sacred one, but its location was a secret kept by the village. So, they agreed to give him one flower in exchange for 60 barrels of water every month. But that amount of water wasn't enough for farming, which led to a food shortage ever since. Clay then asked Takeru if that flower was the same as the Ivor flower. Takeru confirmed that it was, and he realized that the man called Angash was actually very cunning. Some of the farmers still thought Angash had helped them a lot, but Takeru asked them to think carefully. Wasn't it strange that the lake became polluted right before Angash showed up? When Takeru examined the lake, he discovered that the pollution was deliberate and that Angash was requesting a poisonous flower every month. That had to be suspicious. Takeru told them that Angash had deceived them, which made the farmers sad when they realized the truth. But Takeru himself grew furious because of what Angash had done, even leaving the children hungry. He swore to destroy Angash's plan and asked Black to use his spirit magic. Black flew up high and released powerful sound waves that caused the weather to change and rain to fall. The farmers were overjoyed and astonished by the sudden rain. Then Takeru asked Black to stop the rain, and he used a cleansing spell on the farmers, followed by a restoration spell that fully repaired the whole village. But he wasn't done yet. He took out a large pot from his bag and cooked meals for all the farmers, with Clay helping him. The children were especially happy to see food again. After that, the head farmer thanked Takeru for everything, but said he had nothing to give him in return. Takeru told him that he wanted nothing except directions to the Ivor flower, as someone needed its cure. The head farmer didn't object. Then a little girl came up to Takeru and asked him to carry her. Two other kids came too, wanting him to lift them so they could show him the village. Takeru felt happy seeing the children so lively again. The head farmer still felt that he hadn't properly repaid Takeru, but Clay told him to just do what Takeru asked and not to worry about anything else. Still, the head farmer thought that merely showing them the way to the flowers wasn't enough. Clay noted that since the villagers trusted them with something so precious, the flower tied to their village, it showed how much faith they had. Meanwhile, Takeru and Black were playing with the children. Then Takeru followed them to their secret base, as one of the kids called it. Inside, the boy said they had stored some Lid's fruits from last autumn. Takeru picked up one of the fruits and asked if they didn't eat them, and the boy said no, because they were too salty, even though they were supposed to be sweet. So they just threw them away because they were considered worthless. Takeru examined one, then tasted it. The kids were shocked. He exclaimed in surprise, "This is soy sauce." The scene then shifted to Lucilvash's castle, where Tiaras came running toward her mother's chamber after hearing the alarm. She remembered what Takeru had said, that he had cast a barrier in that room, and if anyone tried to harm Maiolaterra, the alarm would go off. When Tiaras reached her mother's room, she found one of the Bernards there. He greeted her, but Tiaras told him not to come any closer. Bernard calmly asked her to relax, and Tiaras demanded to know if he was the one trying to kill her mother. Bernard responded, "Why would I do that?" Tiaras told him that Takeru had said anyone who tried to harm her mother would trigger the alarm. Bernard replied that Takeru was just an adventurer, not to be trusted, and that he had warned her before adventurers are rude, greedy people who only care about extorting money. He claimed that the alarm was just a trick to deceive her. Tiaras grew angry because she knew Takeru was kind, polite, and respectful, far more so than Bernard. Bernard then asked her, "Who deserves your trust more, a stray adventurer with no roots, or someone who served your house with complete loyalty?" But then Lucilvash arrived just in time. Tiaras immediately turned to Lucilvash, asking him to hear both sides. They moved to Lucilvash's office, where he listened to them and said that it was possible Takeru was deceiving them, which reassured Bernard. But Lucilvash also pointed out that Takeru had indeed healed Maiolaterra and improved her condition, and that the magic device indicated Bernard was dangerous. Then Raymond entered, carrying a bowl. Lucilvash said he couldn't yet determine who was telling the truth, and told Bernard he needed to prove his innocence. He handed him the bowl and said it was the special water he had brought to heal his wife, telling Bernard to drink it. Bernard became frightened and backed away. Lucilvash asked, "What's wrong? Didn't you say it was medicine?" Bernard almost confessed, but Lucilvash suddenly splashed the water on his face. Bernard screamed that it was poison. Lucilvash then drank from the same cup and said, "It's just water. Nothing wrong with it. I removed your so-called medicine so no one could drink it." Lucilvash ordered Raymond to call the guards, and Bernard was arrested. Lucilvash watched from the window as they took him away. Raymond returned and handed Lucilvash a piece of paper he had found among Bernard's things. When Lucilvash read it, he was shocked it was a coded message. Whoever had written it wasn't just a petty criminal. Raymond suspected that the entire case might be connected to a large organization. Then the scene cut to Bernard inside the guard's carriage, smiling faintly. After that, we returned to a sheet village, where Angash Angash was knocking on the door of the head farmer's house. A villager came up and told him to stop knocking, asking what he wanted. The man also told him that the head farmer was out at the moment, then asked who he was. When the villager saw Angash, he was shocked. Angash told the man that he had come to collect this month's Ever flowers, even though it wasn't time yet, and asked where the head farmer was. The man replied that the head farmer had gone out with some adventurers to inspect the area. Angash was surprised to hear that adventurers were involved. The villager told him that they had heard the flower was poisonous, and that they could no longer hand it over to him. Angash then called out to his men, and a group of armed men carrying torches appeared. Angash told them they would settle things here. Meanwhile, Takaru and his friends were traveling with the head farmer toward the place where the Iver flower grew. The head farmer said the ground was starting to turn sandy as they got close. Then they saw the flowers in front of them, and Takaru was astonished. He said, "This is the sacred flower." Then Takeru examined the Ever flower, and it appeared to him that it was a sacred beast. The head farmer confirmed that Lord Hovelenbur had saved their ancestors from the lake demon who used to rule this land, and it said that these strange flowers sprouted from the tears of that sacred beast. At that point, Takeru asked the head farmer if he was sure about letting him take that flower that was so important to them. The head farmer allowed Takeru to take as much as he wanted because he had saved their village. Then Takeru went and brought back one of the flowers, which made Black happy. But Takeru said to himself that now he could return to the prince's castle, and after that he could get the Letus fruit. Then one of the villagers came running and told them there was a disaster on the continent. Takeru picked the man up, and Clay carried the head farmer, and they hurried back to the village. At that time, the village was completely burned, which really upset Clay. Then Takeru asked Black to put out the fire, and he also asked Clay to save the people. Clay did carry out the rescue, and Takeru used his magic to extinguish the flames, and Black also brought down rain. This led to them completely putting out the fire. Then one of the farmers came to Takaru and told him that there were no serious injuries, but Takaru felt sad for the village. The farmer then said to Takeru that Angash had come in the middle of the night to get the Ever flower, but they told him it was poisonous, so they didn't give it to him. He also confirmed to Takeru that it was Angash who burned the village, which made Takeru angry. Then the head farmer realized that Gonza wasn't there, and that he had been kidnapped. Takaru said to himself that Gonz was the first child who had welcomed him in this village. Then an old woman appeared and said that Angash was the one who kidnapped Gonz, and that while everyone was busy with the fire, Angash grabbed Gonz and headed toward the lake. Clay felt furious and saw that this was an unforgivable crime. Takeru also burned with anger and used his magic to search the entire area, and he discovered a castle nearby with a group of men inside. He mounted his horse, and Clay did too, but the head farmer was afraid for them. Takeru told him that he had an A-rank adventurer with him, so he shouldn't worry. Clay also assured him that it was already over, and Black did too, in his own way. Then they moved toward the castle, and Black went to observe the men up close, then came back to Takeru to tell him what he had seen. When Takeru learned that they were celebrating, Clay's anger intensified because they were celebrating after burning a village of weak people. But Takeru shouted at Clay to calm down so no one would notice them, or Gonz would be harmed. Clay immediately apologized, but his anger flared up again, and he said they couldn't just leave them like this, and that he had to get rid of this energy inside him. Takeru shouted at Clay again, and then Black said to Takeru that they should hide so no one would see them. Takeru agreed with Black and thought that no one should see them. After that, they used an invisibility spell and entered the castle. Clay struck one of the guards, knocking him unconscious. Then Takeru asked Clay what he thought of the invisibility spell. Clay said it was really good because no one could see them, but Clay asked Takeru why he cared about domestic production, the internal details like that. Meanwhile, Takeru was looking for the Ever flowers that the guards had taken earlier from the village. After that, they kept walking inside the castle. Then we moved to Angash's room and his men. One of the men said that they had kidnapped the child, but another pointed out that they still hadn't found where the flowers were. One of the men suggested that they beat the child or make him a lesson to others. He also said that they were in the final stage of their plan to raise the price of Ever poison, and that he didn't want them to ruin things. The way to raise the price of the poison was to make the beloved wife of the Lord fall ill, and when people heard that even the best healers couldn't cure her, and rumors spread that it was because of Ever poison, the price of the poison would rise and demand for it would increase. But that man then got a bottle thrown at his head, and everyone looked at Angash because he was the one who did it. Angash told them to keep quiet because this plan was extremely secret, and if anyone else talked about it, he'd be thrown into Lake Gallius. Takeru and Clay had listened to the entire plan, and Takeru understood everything. Clay said he couldn't take this anymore. Then Takeru told Clay to attack them now. Clay destroyed the door and, while angry, told them to prepare to die, which made the others feel worried. Clay started hitting them, which caused Angash to feel extreme fear. Angash asked one of his men to unchain the beast, but the man told him it wasn't tamed yet. Angash insisted on releasing the beast because he didn't want to die. After that, Takeru used a trick and asked Angash where the child was, so he could move him to another place. Angash said where the child was, in the second building. Then Angash wondered who had just asked him that, since he saw no one beside him. Takaru and Black then went to the other building to rescue Gonz. When they got there was a guard watching Gonz. Takaru wondered what he should do, but Black said he'd handle it. Then he attacked the guard and struck him, destroying the door in a single blow. Takeru went inside and called out to Gonz. Gonz answered his call, and Takeru found where Gonz was. He told him to step back. Then Takeru broke the door to get Gonz out. But Gonz was crying hard from fear and hugged Takeru because he felt safe with him. Then they left the prison behind Takeru. The men of Angash were running in fear, but Takeru stopped one of them and asked, "Why are you running?" The man said to Takeru, "Because the lake demon has appeared." Takeru looked at the demon's limbs and said, "So this isn't clay at all." Takeru told Gonz to hide behind him and not move, but Gonz kept crying. Takeru said to himself that since Gonz had been kidnapped and imprisoned, of course he wouldn't want to be left alone. After that, he told Gonz to hold on to him tightly so he wouldn't fall to the ground. Then Takeru ran quickly toward the monster and saw Clay, who was fighting with it. Clay threatened the monster because it stood in his way and said he would finish it off completely. Takeru looked at the monster and examined it, and he realized it was very strong. He wondered, "What were you planning to do, Angash?" But Angash was lying on the ground beside Takeru, asking him for help too. Takeru went up to Angash and said to him, "You're the one responsible for all this." Takeru almost got hit by the monster's attack, but he dodged it at the right moment and put Angash inside a protection sphere to shield him from the monster's blows. Then Takeru went over to Clay and apologized for being late, but Clay didn't care. What mattered to him was that the child had been saved. Clay told Takeru that this monster was hard to kill. Every time you cut off its limbs, they grew back again. Takeru threatened the monster and released ice power at it to pin it down, but the monster was still moving. Takeru realized he had to land a blow to the monster's head to finish it off. Clay quickly gathered his strength and struck the monster right in the middle of its head, but the monster's rage only grew. It hit Takeru, sending him flying outside the castle walls, and Gonz was with him. While they were both soaring through the air, Takeru grabbed Gonz and asked Black to save him, and then Takeru fell into the lake. He thought he was going to die, but he saw himself from the other world, even though he was unconscious. He said to himself he never thought he'd risk his life for someone else. He started thinking about Clay and Brilliant, and also about Bai, and how he wanted to get the scissors he wanted, and to eat the sweets he liked. After that, he was saved by a flying horse that pulled him out of the water. Takeru woke up again and introduced himself to the horse, and the horse introduced itself too, saying it was Hovalenbeer. Takeru apologized to Hovalenbeer for falling into its land, but Hovalenbeer didn't care about that and asked Takeru to look under him. Takeru was surprised, because the place had been pitch black just a moment ago and had changed so quickly. Hovalenbeer said that her land had now appeared, and that long ago this place had been full of stagnant mana, so she sacrificed her power to protect the fertile earth and pure waters. She created ever flowers filled with purification, and when her power was used up, she turned to stone. She had been able to protect this land forever, but it was polluted by evil humans, and Takeru realized that Angash was the one who did this. But Hovalenbeer told Takeru that he had taken the mana jewel into himself, and through that she had gotten her strength back, and the lake was purified again. Takeru felt happy because he'd been able to help. After that, Takeru gathered with his companions again, and they were glad that Takeru was alright. Takeru said he'd been saved by a sacred being. In fact, Hovalenbeer told Takeru, "You also saved me," and Takeru felt that now they were even. But Clay asked Takeru, "Who are you talking to?" which surprised Takeru, and he asked himself whether he was the only one who could see her or hear her. Then Hovalenbeer said goodbye to Takeru and disappeared. Then we moved back to the village again. They returned there with Gonz, and Gonz ran toward the head farmer and hugged him. After that, Takeru started preparing a teleportation spell, but Clay asked Takeru if this thing was safe. Takeru assured him it really was safe, and that he'd tried it before. Clay told Takeru that he trusted him a lot. Then Takeru cast the spell, and they teleported to the prince's castle in an instant. They headed to Miolatira's room, and Takeru gave her the antidote. After Miolatira drank the antidote, her condition visibly improved. Then the prince asked Takeru to examine his wife. After Takeru examined Miolatira, he told everyone that the poison had been removed. Miolatira's daughter burst into tears and hugged her, and everyone else started crying too. Then we moved back to the village again, where they repaired the houses, and Black was playing with the children. The head farmer said to Takeru that he still couldn't believe Angash was behind all this, and that they'd really gotten caught up in something terrible. Takeru said they had handed Angash over to justice, and that the village was safe now. The head farmer said he didn't know how to repay Takeru, but Takeru told him that instead of a reward, he had a request. Takeru prepared some food and asked the head farmer to taste it. When the head farmer tasted it, he was amazed and said it was really delicious. Takeru told him it was buttered potatoes with soy sauce. Takeru told the head farmer he had a suggestion and asked if he could buy Lida's crops from him in large quantities. The head farmer didn't refuse, but he asked why. Takeru said he wanted to use the profits to expand the Lida's fields. The head farmer thought the amount was way too big, but Takeru said that if it caught on in Belkheim, Lidaz would become Ashit village's specialty. That really surprised the head farmer. After that, the whole village started eating the buttered potatoes, and they were very happy. Then Clay and Takeru went off to talk alone, and Clay asked Takeru how he felt after finishing such a huge mission. Takeru felt exhausted, and said he was seeing some hallucinations, and that the sky was glowing. When they looked at the sky, Hovalenbeer appeared to them. Clay said he was seeing hallucinations too, but Hovalenbeer descended to the ground and told them it wasn't a hallucination at all. which shocked Takeru. He asked her why she was in the city. Hovalenbeer said she had lived on that land for ages and had turned into a human, which amazed everyone. Hovalenbeer told Takeru that she would go with him, which shocked Takeru, and she said she saw that he had stayed there long enough and that she had restored her blessing to the land and it was time for her to visit other places. Clay asked Hovalenbeer why she wanted to follow this particular man, but Hovalenbeer thought that life with Takeru would be fun. He also wanted a horse, and there was no steed greater than her or like her. She let him ride on her back and asked him where they were heading now, saying she would take him anywhere. Takeru was in huge shock because he just wanted a horse but ended up with a sacred being, and he wondered if that was even allowed. Hovalenbeer was extremely happy and became part of the team. Takeru went to Grossus's workshop and asked him to make him a special pair of scissors again. Grossus told him that he had made a sword that won first place thanks to the materials Takeru supplied him with, so he would make him a pair of scissors like no other. After that, Takeru left the workshop, where Hovelbeiner was waiting for him. Hovelbeiner asked Takeru if he had finished what he was doing or not, and Takeru assured her that he had indeed finished, and that he was really excited to see the results of his work. Hovelbeiner was happy to hear that. Then Takeru thought to himself that after Hovelbeiner had been the guardian of the sacred lake, and after she had been in a petrified state, she decided to return to the world and ended up accompanying him. Then Hovelbeiner asked Takeru if she should whip him so that he would hurry up with his work, but Takeru told her, "We don't deal with people like that, and he'll make it when it suits him, and that's enough for me." Then Hovelbeiner said she wanted to eat buttered potatoes from any food stall. Takeru asked her in surprise if she had tried this food before. Hovelbeiner replied to Takeru's question with a question of her own. "Don't humans say this phrase a lot?" Then she told him, "That's one thing, and this is another." Black also wanted to eat buttered potatoes, and Hovelbeiner asked Black if the son of Valdeus was really full already, which annoyed Black a lot. Then Grite came and called out to Takeru, and they all went over to the guild. Grite told Takeru that every year an official gathering is held, the annual All Resources contest, where adventurers compete for glory and reputation. Arena was really hoping that Takeru would take part in the contest. Hovelbeiner said, "Of course you'll need my help in this contest, right?" But Takeru asked Hovelbeiner to be quiet, then told Grite that collecting resources for customers was enough for him. But Grite told Takeru that his entry in the contest was a personal request from someone extremely important. Takeru wondered who that person was, and Arena told him that it was Prince Lucilvash. Grite told Takeru that the contest was under the prince's patronage, and that he was the one who requested Takeru's participation. Takeru agreed because it was a request from Prince Lucilvash. After a few days, the contestants gathered in front of the guild, and among them were Takeru and his friends. Rudol announced the contest and showed a picture of Prince Lucilvash's family, because this year's contest request came from Prince Lucilvash due to his wife's recovery. He then announced the mission, to collect 7-colored rainbow wool, but Takeru had never heard of this resource before. Rudol said that it didn't matter what rank the person who found it was, but that it was a very valuable resource, and if they didn't recognize it, they should search for it themselves and not ask others, because communication with others is part of an adventurer's life. But this was a pure test of individual gathering skill, and if their knowledge or experience was lacking, they should use public sources. He also told them that if they wanted transportation, they could use a shared carriage or rent a horse. Hovelbeiner thought she was out of service then. Rudol continued and said there would be no help from the party, and that if you won the prize, you'd win it on your own, which fired everyone up. Clay noticed that the Blue Brigade squad wasn't participating this time, which shocked Black. Then Clay asked Takeru what he was going to do now, and told him that if he used a gate, he could come back in half an hour. But Takeru told him he wouldn't use it because that was strange magic, and he didn't want to draw attention. Then Rudol asked them to get ready. Black hugged Takeru, but Takeru asked Black to stay with Hovelbeiner and Clay. Black completely refused. When the signal to start the contest sounded, B was sad about being separated from Takeru and went toward him because he wanted to be with him. But Hovelbeiner stepped in and grabbed him until he calmed down at an incredible speed. Takeru asked Hovelbeiner how she did that, and she told him she had given him a bit of her magic, and with his tears and the sudden flow of mana, he must have exhausted himself. Takeru told B that he wouldn't be late coming back. Hovelbeiner said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of him until you return." Takeru moved quickly, then went over to the library and used the Bosca spell and gathered information about the rainbow sheep. He managed to find out where they lived and moved there quickly. He also thought of Black and that he would be sad because he was far away from him, but if he ate some food, he'd be happy now. Then we switched to Black, who was eating buttered potatoes with Hovelbeiner, but he was also crying. Hovelbeiner asked Black to stop crying and asked him what could possibly scare a child blessed with holy protection, especially since he was faster than Takeru when it came to running. That made Black angry, but Hovelbeiner thought that no human could match her in running anyway, which just made Black even more upset. Hovelbeiner told him that if he wanted to see her speed, she had no problem with that, but Clay asked Hovelbeiner to calm down a bit because everyone knew her steps were faster than anyone else's, and there was no need to prove it. Hovelbeiner saw that Clay was right, so she didn't get angry as long as he understood that. But Black was still angry, so Clay also asked Black to calm down and told him that there was was no creature that could glide in the sky faster than him, which made Black happy. The two of them started eating again, happily this time, and Clay also ate some food with them. Then we go back to Takeru. Night had fallen on him in the forest, and he was taking a break and prepared some food for himself. The next day, he moved to the place where the rainbow sheep were and examined them from a distance. He remembered reading that they were fast and hard to catch, but Takeru used his wits and shouted at them in a way that made them gather around him. This method worked really well. Then Takeru told the sheep that he wanted to collect some of their wool, and one sheep stepped forward and lay down in front of him. Then Takeru started by taking some of his own wool and saw that it was very soft. The others also came closer to Takeru so he could take wool from them too. But there were two contestants watching Takeru, and they were very surprised. After that, Takeru finished this task, and on his way back, he saw one of the dragons flying above him, which made him wonder, since it was the first time he had ever seen a dragon of that size. Then Takeru went back to the guild, where Black was waiting for him and hugged him as soon as he saw him. After that, Rottle announced that the winner was Takeru, which made everyone happy. Then they went inside, and Rottle said to Takeru that he had been promoted to rank FB, and that this title is given to multi-skilled people, and that they are recognized adventurers who can accept quests from the lowest rank F up to the higher rank B. What sets them apart is that the competition rank is decided according to the adventurer's rank. Takeru thought that this meant he could still accept low-rank quests from his usual clients at the same cheap price as before, right? Rottle agreed, but told him that if he delivered something that exceeded the quality required by the quest, then the fee would be raised to match the quality, and there was no problem in adding a small extra amount. But if he messed things up and ruined the market prices, it would cause a big problem. Wade then asked Rottle to be kinder to Takeru, and Wade explained to Takeru that everyone should pay him in a way that matches his skills. But Rottle told Takeru that everyone, including himself, wanted him to rise to a high rank. Wade told him that this was their way of respecting his wishes, while still rewarding him fairly, and also asked him to think about it. Takeru really did start thinking it over. Clay then asked Takeru to stop overthinking things, and told him to be proud of himself. Hovolfnir said that he was blessed with holy protection, and that trying to pretend he was some worthless normal human was pointless. After that, Takeru agreed, and Rottle said to Takeru, "This is an FB rank ring from the guild," and asked him to devote his skills to Europa even more than before. Takeru took the ring, and Rottle confirmed this to him. Then Arena came to them, and told them there was a monster, a forest worm, near the main road, and that it would reach the city soon. Rottle said this was beyond the ability of normal adventurers, so he asked Takeru to step in. Clay said they were fully ready, and told Takeru, "Let's go." Takeru and his team then moved out to the forest, and the worm was already advancing toward them. They were all surprised by the size of the worm, but then Borlight appeared on top of the worm. It was her who had guided it to that place, and she greeted them all. Black went up to her and greeted her, and Borlight said to Black, "Looks like you're in good shape." After that, Borlight came down from the worm and ran toward Takeru to hug him, but Takeru cast a cleaning spell on her because she smelled really bad. Then Takeru asked Borlight what made her ride on top of that worm. Borlight said to Takeru, "You were looking for a unicorn, weren't you? That's why I brought you my friend Kiarasus. That's him," and she pointed at the worm. But Takeru cast a cleaning spell on the worm too, because it really did stink, which made the worm dive into the ground. Takeru said he didn't think he could accept a gift that big. Borlight said she thought a unicorn suited him much better, but Hovalfnir said it was just an ordinary horse that didn't match her power. At that, Borlight asked Takeru who that woman was, but Takeru told her it was a long story, and that he'd tell her when they got back to the city. After that, they went into a tavern and had drinks and food. Takeru told Borlight everything that had happened to him after they parted, how he met Hovalfnir, and how he healed the prince's wife. After that, Borlight asked Takeru if she could join his party, but Takeru had actually been waiting for her so he could ask her the same thing. Black was happy about this too. Borlight had already prepared herself well for this moment, and showed them a guild ring of rank A. Borlight told them that after she separated from them, she trained hard until she rose to rank A. Clay then said to her that meant they would be having a duel sometime soon. Hovalfnir felt a pure aura from her that brought calm to her soul. Hovalfnir had been about to reveal Borlight's true nature, but Borlight asked Hovalfnir not to talk about that. Hovalfnir told her that she didn't intend to hide it for a long time anyway, and asked her to talk about it at the right moment. Borlight was grateful to Hovalfnir, and said she had nothing to hide as long as they were ready to listen to her request first. Then Takeru asked Borlight what request she wanted from him. She told him that her older sister, Ludikar, had run away from the city, and that she wanted him to find her, which shocked Takeru. Borlight went on to say that Ludikar had been chosen by the village to be the temple virgin who would bear the next generation of leaders, and that she was destined to marry one of the men of their clan, and bear him an heir, according to their traditions, but she ran away. Takeru felt this was a very heavy quest. Borlight continued, saying that her sister didn't want this marriage. She agreed at first, but on the condition that she be given a winged horse like no other in the world. When Borlight brought it to her, her sister ran away. Borlight realized that Takeru was the only one capable of finding her, so she came to him, since he had mysterious magic. Takeru then asked Borlight, "Your sister ran away because she doesn't want the marriage, right? Are you sure the right thing is for her to return?" But Borlight didn't want to find her just to bring her back. She wanted to know why she ran away without telling her about it. Takeru accepted the quest, which made Borlight happy. Takeru then asked Clay, and Clay agreed to go with him since they were in the same party. Hovalfnir told Takeru that he couldn't move without her, and agreed to go with them. Then Takeru decided to go to the city of the elves. On the way, Takeru asked Borlight where the city of the elves was located. Borlight said it was in a forest that only opens under certain conditions. Here, in this region, is the Toberon forest, and from there, the elves open a path using their unique magical power. Takeru was surprised by the word path, and Borlight told him she couldn't reveal the details to outsiders, but to think of it as a kind of spatial magic. Then Hovalfnir offered to let them ride on her back if they were heading to the forest, and transformed into a horse, which amazed everyone. Borlight thought she was very beautiful. They all got on Hovalfnir's back, and she moved quickly until they arrived at their destination. Then Borlight started summoning the gate and called upon Great Libellana for help, but Hovalfnir said Libellana was far too young to help, and told her to ask her if she wanted assistance. Takeru realized Hovalfnir was very competitive. Then a black vortex appeared, and Borlight asked them to touch the vortex with their eyes closed. Borlight touched the vortex and vanished inside, which surprised Takeru a lot. Clay said to him that this was the vortex that leads to the homeland of the elves, and told him, "Let's go." Clay and Black stepped forward and went through as well. Only Hovalfnir and Takeru were left. Hovalfnir said to Takeru, "Keep your eye on that elf, and don't be fooled by her brightness. Even the brightest light casts a shadow." Then Hovalfnir stepped forward, and just before she touched the vortex, she told him, "Surround yourself with light strong enough to get you through that darkness. That should be easy for you." Then touched the vortex and vanished. Takeru then stepped forward, touched the vortex, and was transported, which carried him to the land of the elves, but he didn't see everyone there. Then Black came to him, and Takeru asked him where everyone was. In fact, everyone was behind him, and had seen that he'd taken a long time to appear. Takeru saw that they were all dirty, and almost cast a cleaning spell on them, but then arrows were fired at them. Clay blocked the arrows, and Takeru also put up a barrier to stop the arrows from reaching them. Borlight realized those arrows were from her homeland. Then an elven man appeared, and said to Borlight, "You brought outsiders here? If I'd known you were from the lineage that taints our sacred land." At that moment, Takeru remembered what Hovalfnir had said about Borlight.